Hi everybody, it's John Kadlic, the CEO here at Parallel Path, and I'm on an urban trail talk today with my friend Lacey Picazo from ZoCo. She's the CEO and founder, and I'm going to let her spend a minute here in a second telling you about her business and what they do, and then we're going to get into some interesting topics around UX and health and wellness today. So Lacey, maybe just a minute on ZoCo and what you guys are all about.
Yeah, so I'm the founder, CEO of ZoCo Design. We're here in sunny Columbus, Ohio, and we're an experience design studio. But where we are strongest and what that really means is that we are excellent at figuring out behavior change and behavior design within a customer journey, especially as it pertains to where technology intercepts that journey. And so we have a team of product designers, of user researchers who are trying to figure out, okay, we have all these different audiences we serve as a company, as an organization, and typically it's not just one, right? There's a lot of diversity in the teams that we serve. How do we understand what makes them tick, how they make decisions, how they're motivated, and then we can use that knowledge in order to create better experiences for them, whether that ends up resulting in a service journey, whether that results in software design and a new product.
And I know you work with a lot of health and wellness brands.
We sure do.
And I'd be curious, it's maybe hard to generalize, but are there any sort of user experience trends or things that you see consistently are sort of in line with the demands of today's health and wellness consumer?
Yes, I think there are two. The big one, which will be kind of funny coming from me, but the big one I think is that healthcare is taking back its roots to understand how important experience delivery is as an industry. I think there was a trend, and there still is, with everybody building new technology all the time, to assume like, hey, if we deploy these new solutions that are really data intensive, tech intensive, very useful, but are so fragmented and don't always think of somebody's holistic journey of their fears, their worries, why they'll adopt something, why they won't. So much of that was deployed in recent years and then wasn't successful because people weren't actually thinking, well, how will somebody use this? How will they interpret it? Will they actually adhere to it, right? Like we always talk about adherence in healthcare and building tiny habits. Like everything in healthcare is very journey driven, and it's also capitalized over time. Like even if you're a SaaS company, which are a huge cohort of the clients we work with, even if you're a SaaS company, like you're capitalizing over time, right? You don't get your ROI back from working with a patient just once. And it's not good for the patient for them to work with you just once. But so often, like new things were deployed. I'm thinking of all of these healthcare at home kits, right? To like do lab tests and get back all this data about your genetics and about your gut biome and all these things that were valuable, yes, but the journey delivery was really poor. Customers didn't always know what to do with it. Oh, I have all this data now, but so what? And is this evergreen data? Is this a trend of something I should follow forever? How do I build a new habit? Like these just weren't things customers were really comfortable with. And so I think we're back in a focus area of like, we have to actually deliver on our promise and we have to do it over time. And that's actually where teams like yours and mine really thrive is, okay, great. Like, let's not just talk about the value prop in a moment and it's transactional and they bought it, so like we're good. We have to think about all the different moments that somebody might choose to opt out because it's hard, because they're afraid, because it's much more comfortable to do what they're used to, because you just sent them a 90-page report and they have no idea like what I do with this. I mean, I know you and I are both Whoop band wearers.
That's right.
Well, now you got the Apple Watch.
Right.
But like even trying to like dissect all the data that this gives you and know like, well, how do you make this actionable? What do I do with it? I wouldn't say that it's the strongest experience, right? And so I think that the healthcare and wellness brands that I'm seeing win are the ones that are going back to basics, realizing like we're serving real people. The value isn't just the technology, the data, the product. It's how they experience it to meet their goals and how you meet that human at where they're at. And so I think that's very important. And that's where the teams are having the most success.
So you mentioned adherence, you got me thinking, do you find consistent breakpoints in the health and wellness user experience journey, let's say? Is it initial adoption? Is it ongoing adherence as we duck under trees? Or,
as you'll have to do many times.
That's right. That's okay. It's all part of it. I mean, do you find any consistencies there, or is it really truly all over the place depending on the situation?
I mean, it is very situational, right? Like we're a healthcare journey might have friction. And especially because we work so often with technology, engineering, and product teams, especially where technology is deployed, right? Like I think people assume if you build it, they will come. And we both design and build the technology as well as build the strategy for how it's deployed. And so often that's just not true. And so I think it depends. But I would say, like most industries, like a lot of times the problem is after you acquire the customer. What do you do with them, right? Like I think a lot of teams, even internally, are counter-incentivized to think like, oh, great, like we've grown, we've acquired a new customer, job is done, we've won, let's get on to the next.
We're good.
And it's like, well, actually the whole battle is, in healthcare especially, is engaging this person over time so that they can be well, so they can meet their goals, honestly, so you make more money. Like, and these things are synergistic that way. But I think it's the easier thing to abandon because it's the harder one to figure out, right? There's a lot more variables involved.
How about any generational differences? So like what a boomer might expect from an experience, if they're even comfortable using one. Down to a Gen Z person, you know, have you noticed some trends there that also apply maybe to health and wellness?
Yeah, we can go this way.
Okay.
I think, so for starters, as a disclaimer, we've actually done a lot of generational research for some of the big four consultants, especially as it pertains to Gen Z and their thoughts in the workforce. But related to healthcare specifically, I think one of the big things that we see that's different in healthcare and in wellness for younger generations, now it's my turn to duck under a tree, is that there's this trend that's been going on for several years, maybe even close to a decade now, but it is more prevalent with younger folks, that your healthcare is typically much more segmented and siloed. And by that I mean, I think with older generations, it's more likely that people would say, I'm going to get all my healthcare from one health system, right? Like Ohio Health is my system, or Ohio State, or Mount Carmel, whoever, I got to say them all. But like, that's my system. And so I'm going to find my gynecologist there. I'm going to find my primary care doc there. I'm going to find my, my eye doctor, all of it. It's going to come from the same place. And so therefore, those medical records are typically more interconnected. Also, older generations tend to be more like, give me the list, I'll do what you tell me to do, and that's it. And maybe they won't do what you tell them to do, right? Like adherence is still a problem, but they're maybe less proactive to go out as younger generations tend to be. And so what we're seeing for younger folks is like, they get their healthcare from 12 different sources, right? Like whether it's the TikToks they follow, or they've hired a dietitian, they go to a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, they see some other wellness guru, they go do hot yoga, but it's all very fragmented. And they're not really as brand loyal to say, this is always the health system I'm going to go to, these are the doctors I'm going to see. So the data is also more disconnected for this person, but they're proactive, right? Like they're going to try and find opportunities to improve their health and look for new things and try new things and advocate for themselves in a different way. But it's harder then for a health system, of which we work with many, to try to figure out, okay, what is the whole picture for Lacey's health? Because she sees a lot of doctors who are small one-offs, individual practitioners, right? Like they're not connected the same way. And those are the groups that are more likely to say, hey, I'm gonna try this new gut genome, tool and get all this data. But then what do I do with the data? Like I'm in charge of it. And then the last difference that comes to mind are that younger folks tend to be much more verbal and transparent about their health conditions and things that they're trying. Like just within my own team, and we slant younger, right? Like a lot of our team are millennials, have a couple of Gen Zs. It's very likely people will talk about, oh, I'm going to get this surgery in the future, or oh, I've been starting going to this kind of doctor and I really like it, or oh, I've tried this new diet and it's really working for me, or this is my counselor and who I go to, right? Like these things are very open and openly discussed, whereas when I think about my mom or I think about her friends, it's less likely that they're talking about these things, especially outside of their close social circles, right? And so there's a larger peer group for people to see what's working for others and to make it normal, like normalized to talk about health and what they're trying. So those are some of the key trends I think of for generational differences in health and wellness.
And then maybe more broadly, just like thinking down the line a little bit, next 2 or 3 years, for instance, are there some experience trends or consumer demands that you're sort of anticipating or hearing more about that healthcare marketers are going to need to consider and think through in the future?
Yeah. Well, I think that one challenge that large language models have created is it just exacerbated the trust issue, right? Of like, do people trust sharing their data, giving their data, thinking about where it's going? And by the way, people tell themselves a lot of stories that aren't true, right? Like, so people will make assumptions. We've done a lot of research on this topic, on consumer sentiment with AI models and where they come into their journey. And so it exacerbates something that's already there. It's not really new. Like, there's always been a certain amount of fear and trepidation in healthcare and in sharing certain things, and who am I sharing it with, and how will that be used for me? Is this being sold? You know, the lack of visibility and transparency and understanding can be problematic. But I think what's more important is not just how somebody feels, because we're talking about behavior design. So it really will affect how they choose to engage or not engage. So based on these fears and what people are worried about. So I think that's something that folks need to be cognizant of in healthcare, right? Is just to continue to think about the human and that person and what they're thinking and what they're feeling.
Okay. Well, maybe what's one thing you do for your own personal health and wellness? We all have things, right?
Yes.
I'm curious, what's your thing?
I do a lot, John. As a narcoleptic and as somebody with some unique health conditions, I'm very sensitive to what I eat, how I rest, how I exercise, and have tried a lot of things. So I'm certainly in that camp of like the person who's tried all the providers and I have more fragmented system. But I think what's most important to me is I know what my circadian rhythm is. I know when I need to go to bed every night. I know how much even one glass of wine or one Paloma will wreck me as much as I want it. And I eat really healthy. I actually just finished a liver detox because my body was struggling to absorb some foods. And I am feeling so much better, even though that was a hard week of fasting and of not eating the things that I wanted to eat. And so I try to be really conscious about how I'm treating my body.
So most people would not be that disciplined. So that's pretty impressive that you're that conscientious about it and planful day in and day out. But consistent with what we're also hearing from people, maybe more of your generation, that are sort of taking more control of their health, physical, emotional, mental, all facets of health. So that's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
Well, it's been fun getting a little time with you, as it always is. And so thanks for joining us here today, guys. We'll be back soon with another edition of Trail Talks. So we'll see you out on the trail.